Hi all. Sorry I couldn't make it to Paris this time, and hence I have to, present a video presentation. And to begin with, my paper is case analysis Tata Motors acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover. To make sense of what we are talking about here, I'm talking about emerging country multinationals. So basically, this case analysis is just a downstream product of an ongoing research. And I'll show you the ongoing research. I'll talk about this case analysis. I will show you how it fits the ongoing research. So I'm Dr. Dipraj Mukherjee. I'm from Kent State University, that's in Ohio, US, and I teach economics. What I did was also I posted a picture of mine when I was presenting in New York, this April. I kind of said, okay, then that way I can have a connection with you all. So hey all, I hope you can send me some feedbacks as well. I hope the barrier for me not being there will not be an hindrance for me to get some good, solid, robust feedbacks. So what's my paper is all about? Let's move on. The introduction is, as I was mentioning to you, this is about the emerging country multinationals. When we talk about multinationals, traditionally we talk about Western, which we say North. I don't like the word North and South here, but to make use of that jargon, we talk about Western North multinationals who come from North, the Northern multinationals per se. However, right now we can find that multinationals who are coming out of the emerging countries, who are coming out of the developing world, they are globally, they are expanding their businesses, and they are making it profitable ventures as well. So we need to talk about those. For example, if you think about the the IT, the information technology industry that emerges from India, Wipro, Infosys. If you come to the US, you will find almost all of the back office jobs, all of the IT jobs are actually getting outsourced to these three big IT giants from India: Wipro, Infosys, and Tata Consultancy. Or if I take Embraer from Brazil, if I take Huawei from China, Huawei, all of you, the ones who probably have heard about the term before, but don't know Huawei's function as such, is the largest telecom company, which very recently surpassed Ericsson in that regard. So these companies are basically the companies that in the next 2 decades probably would have a very strong global influence. However, we don't talk about these companies as such as a part of the multinationals in terms of the the rhetoric of multinationals, in terms of the mainstream multinationals. We still have not included these companies that much what it should be. Um, Lenovo, the Chinese computer hardware firm, is now the second largest PC company. Huawei, as I was mentioning, has overtaken Ericsson in telecoms equipment. India's Sun Pharma is now one of the world's largest generic drug firms. In 2015, if you go to the Forbes list, you will find that Chinese companies topped the Forbes global list. See, when I go back 30 years ago, when I think about a refrigerator, when I think about a microwave, I will probably think about, in the US, I'll think about General, Electrical. I'll think about GE. I will never think about Samsungs or LGs, which we see right now. So the fact that Samsung or LG right now is capturing the US market uh, is basically supporting my cause, my theory, that we need to talk about these companies who are coming out of the emerging countries even more. So there are some fundamental questions which are still not answered for these multinational companies which come out of the emerging countries. The fundamental questions are: what are the factors that lead to a competitive edge for these EMNEs? EMNEs are basically emerging country multinationals. How did the home country context help them to shape such advantages? By home country, I mean from which country they are emerging. The idea basically is, because the home country resources are limited, because the uses of these resources are limited, so what happens is they can manage with limited resources. They know how to make a profitable venture with limited resources. So that's the first question that is still not very well answered in the international business, international trade literature. what are their core strategies in international markets? What is the impact of their expansion on international trade dynamics? We haven't answered those questions. In my ongoing research, I plan to fill the gap and try to answer some of these unanswered questions. So what I am doing right now is, for this presentation, I will talk about the cross-border acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover by the Indian multinational Tata Motors. Tata Motors Limited, if you know, they had Tata Nano car, which was really a low-end car for middle income families for India. So these are the they're basically the car manufacturers of low-end cars. However, as we will see with this cross-border acquisition that happened in 2008, they really went into the the premium cars market. I will talk about this in the context of the ongoing research. You will see the ongoing research at the end as well. So I'm moving on. FDI graph, if I think about post World War II, the FDI graph looks something like this. Source of FDI is usually north, and usually it was market seeking. If the FDIs are coming from, say, America to the to continental Europe, then it should be north. It's market seeking. You are trying to capture the market. If FDI is coming from the traditional north, that is Western Europe and the US and Canada, to the south, which is Asia, Africa, South America, and so on, then primarily they went to these countries for resource seeking objective, so that they can have factor cost, they can lower the factor cost. For example, cheap labor, so they can manufacture goods at a cheap price. So it's a resource seeking objective, which is why they went to these traditionally south countries. However, emerging country multinationals, these are emerging from the south. So south is probably still market seeking to some extent. That is where the Chinese expansion, the Chinese multinationals were expanding in the in Africa, to some extent, is south, then traditionally south kind of. But when they're going to north, again, I do not like the term north and south, but traditionally these terms have been used, and I think then that way it gives us a picture about what I'm talking about here. So south to north, why they do go from south to north, that is not very well analyzed yet. So let's move on. Let's talk about this particular case study. To go to this particular case study, you will see that it still fits John Dunning's, eclectic paradigm, which was a seminal work in international business literature. Eclectic paradigm, which is OLI framework. O stands for ownership, L stands for location, I stands for internalization. So when a multinational go and invest abroad, they need to have the ownership control. They need to specify the location at which they can have the resources, they can have the market seeking opportunities, and internalization, whereas the multinational should be ready so that it can capture the spillover of technology, the spillover of knowledge from the indigenous industries. So the multinational should be ready to capture all of these. Otherwise, even if you have ownership control, even if you have location advantage, if you don't have the research and development to capture what's going on, then it will not be successful as a multinational. Now, this is not a very new paper at all. This is a paper that was published first in 1977, then in 1981, and Dunning also published a later more modified version in 1988. However, the version is still very contextual in emerging country multinationals, though we need to understand emerging country multinationals to fit into this particular model. So let's go to the case study to understand one particular case of one emerging country multinational buying an advanced country multinational's factory. So in 2008, Tata Motors bought Jaguar Land Rover. The deal was $2.3 billion, And then I have something in a different color here as well. With blue, I've written that the purchase consideration includes the ownership by Jaguar and Land Rover or perpetual royalty-free licenses of all necessary intellectual property rights, manufacturing plants, 2 advanced design centers in the UK, and a worldwide network of national sales companies. So basically what I'm suggesting over here is internalization, as I was mentioning to you in the previous slide. Internalization can only happen if you have the research and development ready, with which you can capture, you can buy, you can acquire the factory of Jaguar and Land Rover and use the technology, use the equipments, use the machines, understand what's going on over there. And I will show you over the course of this presentation that they have invested, like Tata Motors have invested heavily in research and development so that they can make this a successful venture. By the way, Jaguar Land Rover was, the ownership was to the Ford Motors. Ford Motors, the US giant, they had, US giant, before 2008, before the financial crisis. After that, they had to go through many difficulties. Anyways, so Ford was not really successful in terms of running Jaguar and Land Rover. What happened with this particular acquisition is it made Tata Motors transformational in several aspects. This acquisition more than doubled Tata Motors' overall revenues and almost quadrupled its revenues from passenger cars. As I was mentioning to you, Tata Motors previously, kind of manufactured low-end Tata Nano kind of cars. Not only Tata Nano, I'm not defining, I'm not creating a very narrow domain here. They had many other cars in India, but globally they were known as low-end car manufacturers. However, with this, they actually went into the premium car, SUV cars market and so on. So this is an instant outward internationalization for them in terms of passenger cars. And as you would see in the next slide, that gave them a global recognition, a brand image by this acquisition. See this one. Previous to the acquisition, this entirety of it is basically India, and the gray part of it is basically globally rest of the world. But right now, India is this black one out here, and then you have US, you have UK, you have rest of the world, you have west of the rest of Europe as well. So basically you have the expansion in the UK, you have because of the acquisition in the UK, you have expansion in the US, you have expansion in the continental Europe, you have expansion in the rest of the world. I might, when I go back right now, and as I was mentioning to you, I'm Kent State University, this is in Cleveland, Ohio. In Cleveland, Ohio, they have a Jaguar Land Rover, they have a few Jaguar Land Rover dealerships. They were there before as well, but right now the Jaguar Land Rover is giving Tata Motors an image that, okay, this is this company, and hence the consumers are aware of Tata Motors right now. So that global recognition can only come when you buy a advanced country multinational. What happened next? So that was 2008 when they bought these factories. In 2014 they were making profit. Jaguar in 2014 was profiting in the billions when Ford could not earn a profit in 20 years of ownership. Is simply that Tata was able to make it to a top priority, whereas Ford had too much on their plate to focus on Jaguar and give it the attention resources it needed to reach the potential. In fact, Ford thought it to be, Ford has a very cowboy image. That cowboy image is not the image of the Jaguar and Land Rover, and hence you need to come up with a very specific customized brand image. Tata did not have to make the Jaguar and Land Rover brands fit into their previous view. Ford tried to fit Jaguar and Land Rover into their cowboy style of a company. But Tata is more focused on the Jaguar and Land Rover companies themselves rather than changing them to fit into the Tata Motors types of cars. And they had that advantage as well. They had, as I was mentioning, they are low-end car manufacturers. So they don't have to fit into their previous view of what Tata Motors is. So that was 2014. In 2015, you could see that they have invested here. This is extremely important. They have invested 11 billion pounds. So JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, is now one of Britain's most profitable companies. In fact, Epoch is one of the Evoque is one of the most company's biggest seller, accounting for almost a third of sales. So finally, I'd like you to see the last bullet point here. Sources close to JLR said Tata had authorized more funding for production and R&D for a couple of years at about 3.5 billion pounds a year. That has a huge implication. So Tata is investing in the R&D simply because then that way the knowledge spillover that can come from the previous Ford factory of Jaguar Land Rover, they can they can extract that spillover, they can use it for their own benefit. If you don't have the R&D invested, then your workers are not ready, your organization is not ready, your management is not ready to really capture the best of this acquisition. My ongoing research right now is I'm looking into I have 1749 overseas individual cross-border investments of many Indian multinationals, and what I'm looking at is I'm looking at several empirical constructs. I'm looking at the market-seeking motivations, which I'll capture through real GDP per capita of the host country. So real GDP per capita of Britain is very high, and hence Tata Motors went to Britain. It should positively affect how the outward investments happen for the EMNEs, emerging country multinationals. By EMNEs, that's what I mean. Strategic asset seeking motivations, this is extremely important, will be captured by patents per capita. How many patents as a country do you have? Britain has great patents per capita, which means multinational like Tata Motors can expect to benefit from the knowledge spillovers from indigenous firms. But to benefit, to internalize knowledge, they have to invest in their R&D as well. And absorptive capacity, that is where the R&D come into the picture. Is an ability of these multinational enterprises to deal with external knowledge. It will be constructed as a ratio of R&D expenditure over total sales of Tata Motors or of all these emerging country multinationals for 1749 of these projects. So what I have is I have location decisions of outward FDI by the Indian firms. This is through the FDI markets database. This is a database from Financial Times, London, and I have 1749 of their overseas projects of different Indian multinationals. Real GDP per capita to capture the market, I will take it from the World Development Indicators. Patents per capita, again from the World Development Indicators. I should have several control variables. I'm not going to discuss all of these. Absorptive capacity is a very firm specific factor. I'll capture it from Prowess database. Prowess is a database which is coming from Center of Monitoring Indian Economy, CMIE, Center of Monitoring Indian Economy, and this is an excellent database actually for the Indian multinationals. So I'm right now collecting data and have started analyzing. Very prelim results are emerging. My findings along with this case study is something like this. These multinationals from the emerging countries, they are going to these advanced countries not because of the market seeking motive. They just don't want to capture the market. They're going over there because of the asset seeking motive. By asset seeking, I'm saying this knowledge, the tacit knowledge that all these advanced country multinationals have. If you have invested in R&D, then your organization is ready to capture this tacit knowledge of these advanced country multinationals. So that's why this asset seeking motive is helping these multinationals from the emerging countries to go abroad and invest in traditional North. So my conclusion is the motive behind the recent spate of cross-border acquisitions from the emerging country multinationals are market seeking or asset seeking. I would suggest this case study, basically the R&D investment and making Jaguar Land Rover a very profitable venture in 8 years is directing towards an asset seeking objective. It's saying that, as reported by the Telegraph 2015, Tata Motors' huge R&D expenditure certainly point towards the direction of an asset seeking motive, where they are using the tacit knowledge that they are finding from these multinationals of advanced countries. So I claim that emerging country multinationals expand in the advanced world through strategic assets acquisition, which provided them with the tacit knowledge of the firms from the advanced countries, and also transform the emerging country multinationals to globally a brand image. Right now, I'm looking into this ongoing process, this ongoing research, and you know, I've had a discussion with Dr. Datta before. I think I'd like to present it to one of the ABRM conferences, Academy of Business and Retail Management. They are having great conferences all across globally, and I'd like to present my findings to one of the conferences. I'd like to be there in New York in 2017, and also in Oxford, July in 2017, to present my findings there. But I hope this research will fill in the gap in the international business literature about why the emerging country multinationals do invest in advanced countries, why this recent spate of investments happened. On that note, please let me know the questions that you have, the suggestions that you have. I'd highly appreciate your feedbacks on these. And I'm signing off. I cannot be there. I really sincerely apologize. I hope you guys are having a fantastic conference. All my best is with all of you. Thank you.